All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome everybody to this meeting of the East Lindsey District Council Planning Committee. Are we being streamed to the world, please? Oh, we are. Good, that's in comfort. Can you ensure your mobile phones are all switched off and also kept away from the microphone? I think I'm led to believe they can cause interference. No fire drill today. So if anything occurs, the alarm goes off, follow a member of staff to safety, please. Only those members of the public who are registered to speak may do so, which I don't know if you class as members of the public, but welcome anyway. Perhaps you're in a special category, I don't know. Anybody, member who's, well, there aren't any members speaking, so it doesn't really matter. Right, we'll press on with the agenda. I'd like to welcome Councillor Dickinson, who's substituting. Delighted to see her. And I must just make an announcement for the benefit of those to whom it applies. The last training is on the 17th of July here. And you must be aware that if you haven't been through the training, you may not sit. So anybody who has missed it for whatever reason, please ensure that we shall need some fully trained members. We've got 1 or 2 big days coming up with supermarkets and things, and you need to be, we don't want anybody dropping by the wayside who's an active member. Right, thank you. Move on to apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies received from Councillors Kate Marnock, Daniel McNally and Rue Yarsley. And as you've already said, Councillor Carleen Dickinson is substituting. Yep.
Thank you very much. Disclosures of interest. Thank you, Councillor Edgington.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I'm speaking on behalf of my colleague, Councillor Cunnington. He and I are both members of Skegness Town Council. And earlier on this year, we was given a briefing by the housing team as possible locations for these pods. I think that was in March of this year. And subsequently, on the 11th of June, the Town Council discussed the issue and made a decision. Now, for different reasons, Councillor Cunnington and myself wasn't present at that meeting, but I just want it to be noted that we come and sit here with an open mind and listen to all the various arguments for and against before we decide, how view to take, if that's acceptable.
Thank you very much. Are you happy to be joined with that declaration, Councillor Cunnington?
Yes, Chair, thank you. It was only an input on location briefing. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Any further declarations? Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Yes, Chair. I sit on Spilsby Town Council, which is obviously the first item on the agenda that we're going to hear, but I have expressed no view at any meetings there.
Yep.
Just want to make that clear.
Thank you. Any further declarations? Drainage Board members, please. Don't forget us. Well, yeah, just what's doing every meeting, but it needs to be recorded. Right, you've had access to the minutes of the previous meeting. Are you happy that they're a true and correct record? And can I sign them, please? Everybody? No, nobody unhappy anyway. Thank you. Update from the Planning Policy Committee.
Thank you, Chairman. How kind of you to recognise me, and thank you all for seeing me.
Yeah. Member for Cornwall.
Yes, we had a very interesting Planning Policy Committee meeting when we had updates for the presentation from the Environment Agency on the state of the coastal defences and also the Humber 2100 infrastructure project. And we also received guidance for relevant authorities on seeking to further the purposes of protected landscapes. And the other important thing was we had a presentation on the Belchford and Fullerby neighbourhood development plan, which we approved, which will go now to the executive board. And it's interesting because they're a very, very small parish council and they put in ever such a lot of hard work to do it. their neighbourhood plan. So, yeah, that will go forward to the executive and hopefully it will be approved. So I'll shut up now.
All right. Thank you for your gripping report. We'll move on to planning applications, if we may. Item 5 on your agenda, and we'll kick off with a presentation, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, if I can just sort of cross-reference to the supplementary paper, the first two items on the agenda, so items 5 and item 6, effectively relate to the same site. The first application is the planning permission, and the subsequent one is the listed building consent application that relates to that development. So it's the enabler for the works of the building itself. With your indulgence, Chairman, I'll do present them as a single presentation because it is the same project, but there are two separate applications that will need a resolution on. As members will have seen as well on the supplementary papers, I apologise that it's quite a lengthy addition on this one. We brought the application to committee earlier in advance of being able to finalise the conditions to ensure that we could keep it moving on track and keep the project on track. So I think members have probably been through that, but there are a number of conditions on there which relate to both the application, both the planning permission and for the listed building consent. But going through the presentation, not the clearest of aerial photos, but the Spilsby Theatre Sessions House sits here north side of Church Street, between West End and Spence Street. Yeah, A16 main road into Spilsby sits to the north side there. Red line defining the application site. So the theatre building sits there, set back from Church Street. The existing site plan, again, just showing the extent of the building. Now it sits within its plot. The frontage is presently how it has been used as a car parking area. It's well substantial landscaping to the front, and it's in a bit of a state of dilapidation, as you probably see when we go through the photos. The proposal of the site plan, so some additional areas that are being enclosed at the back here, and you can see from the configuration on there are some of the works to it will include, such as adding photovoltaics to the roof. So it's a project that's aimed at not only bringing the building back into a wider range of uses for benefit of the community, but also brings it up to modern day standards and expectations. Again, just a series of drawings showing the ground floor plan as is, and then I appreciate it's difficult to properly follow all the detail on this, but showing the proposed. The key differences really relate to opening up of the auditorium space, gives it more flexibility, and get more seats in there, flexible seating that allow it to be varied depending on the type of event that's going to be used there. New door openings from through the main portico frontage to the site allows opportunity to use the raised area at the front as an overspill sitting area, as with a cafe area that's been provided in a bar area to this side of the building here and the side to West Street. Again, just more the drawing showing this is the first floor plan as proposed. The intention to use some of the buildings up there as sort of office space and workshop space. The plan showing the forecourt area, quite substantial changes to this. At the moment, it's used as a car parking area. It doesn't accommodate many cars, but the idea is to sort of simplify, clean it up, use that as a more public area, limited access only for people to drop off and drop off things and drop off people, so it doesn't become a car parking area. Removal of trees and opening up of the vista to give a greater presence to the street scene, which I think the later drawings will show a bit clearer. And again, a number of drawings now that show the elevations as proposed. So that's the east elevation, and that's the Spence Street elevation. The frontage of the site. That's the opposite west elevation off West Street. and then north elevation of the site. So that's looking towards the rear of the building. And again, we've got the roof plan there, which shows you the photovoltaics on the roof, etc. They're probably the clearest feature you can see on there. And some of the outbuildings, again, as proposed, they're simply intending to sort of tidy those up and use those as storage areas. Okay. Cross sections, which I think are helpful in showing what happens. They create greater performance area in here by stripping out some of the existing features, all done in a very sensitive manner. You get a new gantry and reinforced roof performance here, so you can get better opportunity to use the space that we created, which will be a flexible space. So just in the cross sections. Photos of the site, so that's the principal elevation, Church Street. This is where it will be opened up. I think that tree is one of the ones that goes, but it opens up the vista and creates a much more dominant and stronger presence onto the street scene. Also, the area in the front, as I say, becomes accessible to the public, so it becomes very much a usable area as part of the project. Again, looking on Church Street, site sits behind the hoardings over here, so you can't see it itself, but you can see that there's a tree line frontage there. Building sitting back behind those. So, as I say, the proposal will open this up and create a far more prominent and dominant structure within the street scene. That is looking towards the rear of the building on Spence Street. And again, rear of the building itself. Closest residential property, this is the garden area to it here. And just West Street, I think that's West Street elevation. Again, looking at the rear of it, and I think that was probably the former police house, wasn't it? I think it was, yeah. And a few internal photos, you can see the state of it. There's some lot of interventions have had to be made to sort of support it and enable some temporary repairs over the past few years, which I think are referenced in the report. And again, just a few other interesting internal photos showing what it's like at present. It's one of the prison cells, police cells, and yeah, the condition which on the upper floor there, which is in quite poor state of health. That's it, Jim.
Thank you. Delighted to welcome, excuse me, two speakers, if you care to. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Right. Any questions? Apologise. Yeah, on you go.
Apologies. One thing I omitted to say, which I should have done in the, and I appreciate members will have read it on the supplementary paper, but what we're asking for as officers here is a revised recommendation for the planning permission, which is simply we're looking for delegated authorities so we can finish negotiations in respect of precise detailing of windows. The aim is to manage or ensure we get the right mitigation from noise from the building, but that we secure that in a way which is most appropriate to the heritage asset. So there are solutions. It's not in principle a problem. It just needs that little bit more time and work to make sure we get the right solutions for the right windows. So the resolution we're asking for is to allow officers to have delegated authority to continue that and issue permission.
Councillor David Hall.
That's what I'd like to make a proposal that we actually accept this with the delegated powers to the officers as needed.
Perfect. Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, I'd like to second that. It seems there's no point in keeping a historic building if it's a heap of rubble, is it? So we should progress with it. I've never seen quite as many conditions in my life. I think it's the Guinness Book of Records, and I think it should be recorded somewhere. Thank you. I'll second the proposal.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to do anything else? Are we doing the planning permission first? We're voting on the planning permission first, then the listed building permission. All those in favour and reference to planning permission? Unanimous. Thank you. Now listed building consent, please. Stick your hands up if you're supportive. Oh, do we need?
Separate.
Oh, sorry, yeah, councillor Cunnington, sorry. Proposal and second are required.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, very good report on both, very thorough. Somebody's got the microphone on. And yeah, happy to support with officer recommendations with delegation.
Thank you. Councillor Hall,
And I'm very happy to second that one. To bring more culture back into the area, that would be great. Fabulous.
that's great. It's in a terrible state by the look of these
Sure.
pictures, and it'll
been
be its salvation. It's too fine a building to be lost, I think. But anyway. Okay, everybody happy? Oh, yes, sorry. Everyone in favour? On we go. Thank you. Okay, unanimous, yeah. Right, move on to the next item if we may. And then this occasion we have got two speakers, so that's it. Would you care to join us? Sit at the front, please. Each speaker has a minute and a half to make their case, but I shan't be too severe on you, so as long as you don't get carried away, you'll be okay. Have you decided who would like to go first? Yeah, presentation first. Yeah, hang on. Yeah, this is an interesting meeting. Right, I'll have the presentation first, and you can question these in a minute.
Good morning, thank you. First of all, can I just refer councillors to the supplementary agenda? And in addition, there's a list of conditions that's been passed round this morning with four recommended conditions on. In addition, it's recommended that another condition is imposed which requires the pods to be fixed to the ground with a ground anchor. So an example wording could be the pods hereby permitted shall be anchored to the ground with chains or other similar mechanism prior to first occupation. The ground anchors shall remain in place at all times. So that also forms part of the recommendation. I just want to confirm as well that the consultation period has now ended. So does anyone need a bit of time to read all that, or is it okay? Right,
Councillor Cunnington.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, can I just ask that the 5 conditions are actually physically read out? I've read the supplementary this morning prior to getting here, but obviously I wouldn't see the conditions have been.
Yeah, would you mind doing that, please?
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, the first one is a standard time condition. So it says the development hereby permitted shall begin not later than 3 years from the date of this decision. The reason is as required by Section 91 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990, as amended by Section 51 of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004. Condition 2 is the approved plans condition. So the development hereby permitted shall be carried out in accordance with the following approved drawings and other documents, and any drawings approved subsequently in writing by the local planning authority pursuant to any conditions on this decision letter. And it's 3 plans, which is the site location plan and the design of the pods and the existing layout plan that are included on the approved plans, all received on the 11th of June. Reason being for the avoidance of doubt and in the interest of proper planning. Condition 3, no development shall take place until there has been submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority a plan indicating the positions, design, materials and type of boundary treatment to be erected. The boundary treatment shall be completed before the first pod is occupied. Development shall be carried out in accordance with the approved details. The reason is to ensure an appropriate boundary treatment is provided that reflects the character of the area in accordance with SP 10 of the East Lindsey local plan. And the final one, condition 4, the pods hereby permitted shall only be occupied as temporary emergency accommodation for homeless people in Skegness. The reason is the pods are temporary in nature and are located in an area where permanent residential accommodation would not be appropriate due to flood risk. This condition is imposed in accordance with SP 18 of the East Lindsey local plan and the requirements of the National Planning Policy Framework. There is a condition 5 listed, but that's not actually a condition. It's just a usual positive and proactive statement that normally goes out on a decision notice. Okay. Okay. So moving on to the presentation. So I think we're just okay. So Google Plan application. So this is Princess Parade, quite a long, narrow car park. The application site is right at the southern tip here. So you can see next to it, there's a pathway that leads down to the beach. The car park is accessed here of South Parade, Princess Parade, and down through here. Up here is like a compound area that the council use for maintenance. This compound here is for the Skegness Boat Club. So that's got railings around it and lots of boats inside. And you can also access up into this car park through there as well. So all around here are sand dunes and coastal habitats and leading off to the beach. So just a slightly more zoomed in version, just to show the car park with the application site just at the southern tip down here. Site location plan just showing the access all the way down through the car park, area outlined in red down here. So this just shows the existing site. You can see the car parking spaces. It'll roughly remove about 4 car parking spaces. So these ones here. In reality on site, you can't park in that one because there's a bin in it. And these 3 are very small car parking spaces. They're like very short. And as you can see from the report in the supplementary agenda, the car parks team have confirmed that they haven't got any objection to the loss of these spaces. So this is an indicative layout showing the 4 pods, but effectively they're arranged in pairs, slight gap between them, but basically joined together because they share a solar panel. This is indicative because, as you'll see from the report, they do need to comply and have further discussions with the site licensing department. But this is an example of how they could be arranged. Fencing around the outside. It's proposed to have a central seating area where residents or users of the pods can have meetings with the homelessness team. And then this is example of what the pods will look like. So plan view on the left and photos on the right. Example of one here in situ. So they've just got a door and the high level window on the front, and inside just a bed and a toilet with a sink as well. So photos, this is taken, obviously stood in Princess Parade car park looking south towards the site. So it's in this area here. Bit closer view of the site. So it would come up to roughly around here-ish, the fence would be, and across. Again, you can see the 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces here just up along against the wall, so you can see they'll be quite difficult to use at the moment. The footpath leads off to the left. And looking westwards across the sites, this would be the rear boundary. Fencing across here and along here towards where I'm stood. Just another view. And that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Newton is the agent and Carol Ribbon is also a speaker. Have you decided who's going to go first? Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. The purpose of the pods is to provide much needed emergency accommodation for homeless people who are sleeping rough. The number of homeless clients, and specifically people who are sleeping rough, continues to rise across the district. Clause 3 of Policy SP 18, Coastal Housing, states that the council will support affordable and specialised forms of housing for vulnerable or minority groups in towns in the coastal zone, provided there is an evidenced local need. The council have identified that for the first 9 months of 24 to 25, 152 people were verified as sleeping rough in the district, of which 76% were sleeping rough in Skegness. Therefore, there is clearly a need for the pods in Skegness. In terms of flood risk, as the proposals of a vulnerable people, the sequential exceptions are passed automatically due to Annex 2 of a local plan. Currently, rough sleepers who do sleep on the dunes adjacent to the site have no access to flood risk information or warning. As part of the proposals, a robust flood warning and evacuation plan will be put into place for the users of the pods, which provides a clear betterment and reduce the risk to life overall. The evacuation plan will utilise the Environment Agency's warning system and flood advisory service, which will be used to inform the rough housing team. The evacuation plan is supported by the local authorities' emergency planning team. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this matter.
Thank you. When you're ready.
Good morning. I'm the team leader for the rough sleeping prevention and recovery team, and I'm here to talk about a practical, compassionate solution to a growing issue in our community with the homelessness pods. These pods provide immediate, safe and dignified shelter for people sleeping rough. They're not a permanent fix, but they are a vital first step. Especially during severe weather or emergencies like floods, pods allow us to respond quickly and protect lives by responding to the early warnings of flood risks effectively and efficiently, rather than searching throughout the town, including the foreshore, gardens, the beach and the dunes with no warning system. They're also cost effective, easing pressure on emergency services and temporary accommodation budgets. But more importantly, the pods are part of a wider support system, acting as a bridge, connecting individuals with outreach teams, healthcare, addiction support and housing services. This isn't just about shelter, it's about creating pathways out of homelessness for those who've run out of options, or cannot cope with traditional housing or even intensive supported housing. Pods offer stability and a chance to engage with support services without the daily pressures that led to the streets. By approving this initiative, we show our community is ready to act with compassion, innovation and responsibility. With responsible management, homelessness pods can make a real difference for the individuals and for the wider community. Thank you for the time letting me speak today.
Thank you very much. If you could remain there, and I'd like to invite members to ask questions of our speakers, please. Councillor Cunnington, followed by Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've got two questions, one to Mr Newton and one to our officer.
Well, we'll deal with the speakers first.
Okay, thank you. Mr Newton, you read out reference to a policy regarding housing. For clarity on this application, when we read the pack, it relates to these pods being more along the lines of a caravan. So can you confirm how you've determined this application? Are these pods being classed as housing or are they being classed as caravans? Because like I say, you referred in your statement to policies, and does that policy cover caravans?
I think there's some crossover between what they are defined as. Obviously, I think the plan officers have accepted as well and put forwards that they're not additional housing, because they're not. We can't say that, but they are providing a vital accommodation type for these clients. I think in terms of the caravan element, obviously site licensing have become involved and they've classed them as being caravans, but they're clearly not. You can see from the photographs that they're not a caravan. They are a type of accommodation, a type of temporary house for these clients. So yes, it probably doesn't fall within one nice bracket, but that's the nature of what these are.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, no, for clarity, as members here, we're trained to follow policy on the application in front of us. You're telling us that policy relating to housing covers this. It's not what you think, it's not your opinion, it's not your thoughts. I'm looking for a clear-cut policy. Are you classing these as caravans or housing? It does make a difference as to how we determine this. Thank you.
Yeah, I accept that, but as I said, you can't try and pigeonhole these into one or the other. The officers have referred to that policy in their report. and have justified the site of these report. They're not caravans. They're clearly not caravans.
I
But
I think the officers would clarify this, Councillor Cunnington, when it's their turn, if you can bear with us in that way. Councillor James.
Sorry, my concern is only the fact that, I don't think the people using the car park generally should be intimidated by this group here. Are they inspected frequently, like daily? And is there somebody responsible for refurbishing them after each occupant?
They will be checked every day, Monday to Friday. At the weekends, they won't be because we don't work 24/7. But however, if there's any concerns, like there is when they're all sleeping on the streets, members of the public can also ring the out of hours number for the housing team. There's always a duty officer on call 24/7, which would then make reference to myself, who would then go out and speak to the clients involved with any concerns or issues. What was the other part of the question, sorry?
That's answered my question, really. Will there be also a notice up somewhere where that number would be available?
No, there wouldn't be a note. There'd be a notice to say there's out of hours duty officer, which is the 01507 611 11 number, and then it goes to Serco, who then contact the duty officer who's on call, who would then in turn have my number, and they would call me or my senior, and then we would take appropriate action. As far as the maintenance of the property in between use, we've already organised in the preparation of this for an outside company to deep clean the pods each time, and that is all in with the costings.
Thank you.
Councillor Dickinson, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask about the pods in the event that they are flooded. Are they reusable? Is the fabric of them such that they can just be cleaned out and then reused? They're not spoilt at all. And also, is the lighting that I see there was a light in the car park, is that adequate enough to illuminate the site? Because obviously in the winter months when it's darker, some of these sleepers will be smoking or whatever and going outside for a cigarette. I'm assuming they're not allowed to smoke in the pods. Thank you.
No, they're not allowed to smoke in the pods, and that will be monitored by my team. If they are smoking in the pods, they will be talked to like they do in any other temporary accommodation that we use. As far as the lighting concerned, I'm not sure whether it's going to be stayed on. We have asked for that to be on all night, alternative ones, and we're looking at that situation. As far as the safety of them down there with no lighting, they're already down there, we're sleeping. So they make their way down there already in the middle of winter, and that is one of the safest places that they find to sleep down there.
Thank you. Sorry.
About the pods and the flooding, there was not.
Yes, flooding issues, please.
So I think by the very nature, they're very practical items. So as Jane discussed, they will be tethered to the ground, and given there's very little in them in terms of fabric or things like that, I think that if they do flood, it will just be the same as deep cleaning them. I think there's not overly a lot to spoil on them. They are very pragmatic items really. So yeah.
Happy? Yeah. Any further questions for our speakers? Did you want to go, Councillor Knowles, or not? Sorry, I didn't. No. Any further questions of the speakers? If not, we'll open it up to questions to the officers, which Councillor Cunnington, you'd like your question answered, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I've got another question as well for the officers. Just for clarity, I've read the supplementary, and just for the voice recording, it states a number of car park spaces. Have we actually got, alongside the supplementary, the actual physical foot space in meterage for this area of these 4 spaces, please?
Through you, Chairman, if I can I think it's a good question of Councillor Cunnington in terms of the question of housing caravans policy, which policy is applicable. But I think Mr Newton in his speech is quite right. There is an element of overlap. What I'd do is draw members' attention really to the principal development part of the report. the way we've approached this as officers is that, yes, technically, that they fall within a definition of a caravan. That's the view of our licensing team. However, in the same way as park homes are technically caravans, they can be homes for people, they can be dwellings. In this case, they are, we're treating these as might technically be a caravan, but actually they're providing accommodation for people, not as a dwelling that's sort of all singing, all dancing with, cooking facilities, etc., but they are a bespoke form of accommodation that's providing an attempt to deal with a very clearly identified need within the district and in Skegness in particular. To that end, our policy SP18 actually makes provision for us to look at delivering accommodation that deals with that in a positive way. So the way we've approached that is to consider them as a dwelling, but a bespoke type of accommodation unit to deliver on that identified need. So hope that clarifies that part.
Thank you.
Yep. I'll probably have to pass on Jane in a second once I've forgotten what it is.
Yeah, what was your second?
Yeah, well, yeah, the second one was on the footprint.
Oh, the footprint, yes.
But going back to that then, just to give clarity, because on this application, there is going to be a lot of public perception. I can see that happening already. So I want to make sure that we are clear and we all understand what we're dealing with. So I understand policy 18 can be interpreted in whoever view sits and reads it. However, if we are looking at it with the interpretation of ourselves as committee or individuals, whichever, while we're sitting here debating this, the policies that we've got relating to ground floor living accommodation and flood risk, surely that would outweigh the policy for using these as housing. I just see there's going to be a lot of public perception from homeowners, from caravan sites, and I want to make sure that we're clear and we've covered everything, because it is us that is going to take the grief.
Okay. Anybody have any go?
The response I would give to that, I think, as I set out in the report, is the people are already there sleeping rough in the dunes. So the idea is obviously to bring those into these shelters. So you're not increasing the number of people. So whereas possibly in your average caravan site application, you've got people coming on holiday, they live elsewhere, you're increasing the numbers in the town. This won't be increasing the actual numbers. Those people are already there. We're just trying to provide a shelter for them. So that's the argument in terms of the ground floor sleeping accommodation. They are already sleeping on the ground, just outside in the open air in the dune somewhere. Whereas, yes, they will still be sleeping on the ground floor, but with a cover over their heads.
Yeah, totally understand that. But again, it's us giving permission to something. They're already possibly taking drugs or alcohol, drugs being illegal. We're not giving them permission to do that. So that doesn't fall within any legal rights that we have. Regards planning side, we're actually then putting in permission for them to do this, which then puts responsibility for us to do this. Anybody can do what they like in their own time, in their own leisure, that is fine. But does that then mean to say it's right for us to give them permission and allow them to do it? So I'm just literally covering ourselves.
Yeah, I think we're overstepping our remit there a little bit. We can't presume to judge what they're doing in there. You may be perfectly right in what you surmise, but I don't think we can take that.
No, sorry, Chair. Sorry to be like that.
No,
But it was more it was like my mum used to say to me years ago as a kid, if somebody told you to put your head in a fire, would you? No, you wouldn't. Them doing what they want to do, sleeping outside in the roof, is their choice, not ours. For us to actually then provide them an accommodation to sleep on the ground floor is then our choice. It puts responsibility for us. They choose to do it. We can't stop that happening. But if we then provide them that accommodation on ground floor, that then does fall within planning. That was the point I was trying to make.
And the only sort of observation comment I think I make on it is that from a planning perspective, the way to approach it is these are a bespoke form of accommodation that's required to try and deal with a very pressing an identified need that is equally referenced in the council's housing strategy. It's a requirement of the council's housing strategy to try and address this problem. We have planning policies, particularly for the coastal policy area of SP18, that is clearly affording the opportunity to be able to address that type of need by providing specialist form of housing, and that's sort of exactly what we're in this case. It is a specialist form of housing. It doesn't set a precedent. It's a bespoke type of accommodation for a particular pressing need. The issue of flood risk is a real one. The way that's managed in traditional sense with caravans on the coast is there's a seasonality condition that's imposed. That's obviously not an appropriate response for this proposal because the need is year round. So that's not something that could be explored and could be imposed against the development. But what we have done, what officers have done with the applicant, is try and ensure that there is the best available and most suitable mitigation in place to safeguard the people who would be occupying these units. I think that's been explained by the speakers on as to how that would be delivered, and the evacuation and flood warning plan that's in place is one that's equally won the backing of council officers. So we, as officers, we think that it is a bespoke set of circumstances. It's a very unique set of circumstances, but we think that there is justification for it that would allow it to be accommodated within current policy requirements.
Okay, Councillor Edgington. Oh, sorry. Well, can we come back to that? Find out. Do we know the footprint? The area that's been lost.
So generally speaking, car parking spaces are 5 metres long and 2.5 metres wide. That's generally how big a car parking space is in a public car park. This has been here a long time, so it might be the older measurements, which is 4.8 metres by 2.4 metres wide. So there's 4 of those. I'll let you work out the maths. Can't do the maths for you. And then you've got the turning area, a bit of turning area in front of it, included within the site area. So you've got like 4 parking spaces. Let's say on the worst case scenario, they're 5 metres long by 2.5 metres wide. So you've got 4 of those. And then you've got the turning bit in front, which just, you know, if you do a worst case scenario, just double that to get an absolute worst. I'm not saying that is the size of this site, but that would give you the worst case scenario.
That's a fairly good guide, I think. That's quite impressive.
So sorry, I can't do the maths and math.
No, that'll do. Councillor Edgington, you have the back, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think that this particular application, there's 2 overriding considerations as far as I'm concerned. First and foremost is the fact, as has been said in the presentation, and with the additional comments from our 2 speakers, that there is a pressing need to provide some facilities to encourage people not to sleep rough overnight, etc., etc. So the other issue with this is not the fact that this particular units look rather smart, actually. It's the location, and that is the key thing. What has been proposed is beyond the flood defence line, and we do know that in the autumn and spring tides, the sea can come in quite quickly. Some of the people that own businesses on the foreshore, they was inundated only a few years ago. And so the issue is that the fact that accommodation is required for the district, I don't think that is, you could argue against it sensibly. What concerns me is the proposed location for these pods. They are in a vulnerable position in terms of should there be a tidal surge and so forth. And we do know, I've lived in Skegness most of my life, and I am aware of the sudden surge aspect of that. And also, I think the police gave some comments to the town council in their relative location, especially overnight. They are vulnerable to, whether we like it or not, people who, you know, vandals and so forth, which would put the occupants at some form of risk. So I think that from my point of view, the issue here is not the pods themselves, but the proposed location in terms of flood risk, which is the Environment Agency, notwithstanding the various measures we've made in a sense to mitigate their concerns, still feel that they can't support the application for that reason. And I have to think that often in other applications, when we've gone against, for instance, the Highway Authority on their comments, and we are told it's very difficult if you've got a statutory body coming forward with their views on a particular application. And I think I'm right in saying the Environment Agency is a statutory consultee, am I right? Which means that their views have to be taken into account in our deliberations. And my view is these facilities are needed, but I have to be honest with you, I think that the location proposed, given its potential for being susceptible to flooding, its relative, its location relative to other, inhabited buildings, particularly in the winter months, when it's going to be dark and so forth, which means that I am not comfortable with the application insofar as location. The reasons is not an issue for me. They're needed. It's just location, and that's is my concern.
Thank you. Councillor Knowles, please. Followed by David Hall. Press again, please. Press your thing again, please. We can't hear you actually, but
Sorry. I was a bit concerned at first that we were moving a problem from one place to another, but listening to the speakers and listening to what people are saying, I mean, just tackle the flood risk. I mean, we all know on the East Coast, there's only one way to get rid of the flood risk, and that's all move to high ground, and that ain't going to happen. I do take the point that the last speaker made, but I was also worried about the sort of use of these and how they were going to be monitored, and I think they do have to be monitored. I'm convinced that they are going to be looked after properly, and I think taking people off the street and putting them in something like that, not the best accommodation in the world, but it's a lot better than what they've got now. And I would move approval. Thank you.
Councillor David Hall. Got him.
Okay. As with the previous speakers, I do agree that this is a much better accommodation for the rough sleepers. One of the worries I do have is, yes, now in the supplementaries they have we are talking about anchoring them down, but as far as I can see on the actual plans themselves, the doors to the actual pods themselves aren't flood risk safe. So if we can put a condition in that the flood doors can be put onto the pods, so that if they do get flooded out, they're unusable. So if we can put flood doors in there, we can actually get them up and being used as accommodation as quickly as possible after a flood event.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Cunnington again, please.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me a chance to speak again. I refer to public perception. We are looking here at our application, which is in front of us today, which clearly states 4 units, not 2. The licensing committee have said they can put 2 together to become 1. If we were to tell a caravan site owner that, when they put an application in, like we had a few weeks ago at one of our previous committees, they've actually got enforcement action against them because they've got too many units on site. Our application numbers clearly state 4, not the 2. When I try to measure up the physical size, which is what I was asking for the footprint, I'm looking at that, and even if there were 2 units, the measurements we've got on our agendas and what we've been told is 3 metres between these and the fences, which even if you've only got 1, a 5 metre bay is all we're giving. So you've got 3 metres behind, 3 metres in front, there's 6 straight away, that's without the size of the unit in there. And on length of it, if there were individual pods, as in the 2 together, so obviously 2 units, which is what we're talking 16 metres. So we're at least 8 metres by 16. If we put them out as 4 pods, leaving the 6 metre caravan licensing rule in, which is in the agenda pack within the papers, it's 6 metres between each pod. So according to the planning application, I don't see that we actually have physical space allowed to allow these pods. And then when you look at the supplementary as well, you read the comments from the Environment Agency, and they clearly state they object. So it is interpretation on what our officers have said and how we take this against a statutory consultee, which is a totally independent body that says this does not meet flood risk. We can all interpret things in our own way, but we have an independent statutory consultee against one of our officers or us as a committee. The public would say that, are we doing this just because it's an East Lindsey application? And that's probably what I would say when I've read it and when I've listened to what's been said.
We'll just ask the officer to address that. We'll ask Councillor Dickinson, you're next, please. Well, keep going. Tell us what they'll sort it out.
I think with the flood warning and evacuation plan in place, you know, the homelessness team aren't going to leave anyone to be at risk. I think they've tried to mitigate everything. The Environment Agency were always going to object to this, I think. The location for usage is probably the best location for the homeless people, because as we all know, homeless people, I'm sure the team will confirm this, sometimes they won't go somewhere else. They'd rather just be out in the open. At least we're giving them a warm, dry, safe space and where they can be monitored, as has been said before. So for me, I'm happy to second Councillor Noel's proposal to approve these. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, Councillor Alex, or then you.
Yeah, so I was going to second Councillor Niles actually, but I think, you know, Councillor Niles and Councillor Dickinson has said it all really. I think obviously it will be incredibly important that the various teams at East Lindsey, the homeless team and you know, people that deal with flooding do just obviously have those plans in place to ensure that people can get out safely if there is a flood risk. And so yeah, I support the application based on, you know, the material planning considerations in front of us. Thank you.
Really good, thank you. Are you ready to come back? Yeah, then Councillor Edgerton. No, you go, please.
Yeah, Chairman, thank you. Firstly, just a quick observation in terms of Councillor Clinton's concern about the sort of spatial arrangements and the site area. The plan that you can see before is only indicative, and ultimately the fine tuning of that will require agreement through licensing, but that's separate to the planning process. But what I would say, just looking to Jane for reassurance on this, but I think that plan has been informed by informal dialogue with colleagues in licensing. So we're fairly confident that that is achievable, i.e. the 4 units that we're talking about can be achieved within that site area. In terms of the broader considerations, again, yes, and as the officer report said, there are a number of issues that come to play in this and require consideration. And it's certainly the case that the Environment Agency have maintained an objection. They've been very sympathetic, I think, and understanding about in the discussions we've had to the aims and ambition. But there is an element of, with respect to the Environment Agency, there's an element of asking, if you ask somebody about what they think about flood risk when their issue is flood risk, you know, sometimes they've got nowhere else to go in the answer they can give. But the role of the planning system here is to consider it in the round, to balance it all up. And amongst other things on that, we do have that bespoke policy position that says that it doesn't quite term it as exceptional circumstances, but it does say that where we do have those particular needs and evidence needs, which is the case here, then it does offer significant support for that. And all you're doing here is balancing that against you know, the risk of flood risk, but which has equally been moved through to minimise through the measures that have been put in place. So it is a balanced judgment at the end of the day, absolutely, but one that we feel in the round still weighs in favour of the proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Edgington. And Councillor.
Thank you. I think I should probably give in a minority view in this, but I just briefly reiterate my initial comments. The fact that these facilities is needed is not beyond question. It's down to location. And in this particular proposal, they are beyond the flood defences. So in a sense, we're going against what I would call consistency when it comes to planning regime. I also feel that the Environment Agency do have a point in this, and you've got to bear this in mind. I think that we're trying to get people away from sleeping on the beach and so forth. If we put a facility, nice as they are, beyond the sea defences and so forth, in a sense, we are almost legitimising people having sleeping overnight in an area which is potentially at flood risk. And living in Skegness, I know how quick the tide can come in those crucial months. And I just feel that from my point of view, because I feel that I know it's difficult, and I don't minimise the effort that the officers have put in to try and find a suitable location. I think because of the potential for flood risk, the potential for setting a precedent when it comes to further applications, which, however minor, which would go beyond the eastern boundaries of the sea defences, will set a precedent for the future. And for that reason, for myself, I can't personally support the move for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hall.
Being a bit fussy. Can I have confirmation for the additional consideration for the flood doors onto the pods themselves?
Yeah, we'll ask the proposer and seconder if they're happy to include that.
Thank you.
Well, and yes, we need to know if it's possible. That's something else to think about. Have you any further comment particularly about the concerns about the Environment Agency and flooding? No.
No, nothing really to add on, Chairman. I think it's
really. Any further comments or questions? Stick your what's it on?
Pardon, may I make a counter proposal, please? That the application is refused on grounds of flood risk as identified by the Environment Agency. We put the occupant orbit in a temporary accommodation at risk should those conditions occur, and that the proposal really ought to be not gone through. So I propose that we cannot support it on the grounds of flood risk as identified by the Environment Agency as one of the statutory bodies. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Councillor Jones.
I'll second Councillor Edgington.
Anybody, any further comments or observations? First of all, I'd like to find out if the person who proposed and seconded it, the people, would be happy with Councillor Hall's addition of flood-proof doors. You don't have to accept it, but are you happy that that he was a proposer and he's happy?
Yeah.
And you're, thank you. That's right. Which one do we do? Yeah. Right.
Motion on the table, haven't we?
Doing this first.
Yeah.
Right. We've got it's proposed and seconded for approval with the condition about the doors if it's possible. So all those in favour of approval, please show.
That's 5.
Those against?
4.
So, yeah, that application is approved. Thank you for a very far-ranging discussion. I think that's given that a very good airing. Right, you've had access to the appeals decided in your agenda and copies of delegated decisions. And the date of the next meeting will be the 7th of August. And we'll see you then, all being well.